Hey guys, this is going to be a quick review of Chapter 7 of Spring Starts Here. So we're going to be looking at understanding Spring Boot and Spring MVC, which is the Model View Controller. So if you're a Java programmer and you want to start learning about frameworks, I definitely recommend Spring and definitely recommend Spring Starts Here. So essentially, this is Spring Boot here. You have to go to start.spring.io. There's an alternative way to do it if you have like the Premier IntelliJ, like IntelliJ Ultimate. However, if you don't, you can use start.spring.io. So over here, essentially what the Spring Boot does, it kind of creates the basic templating that you need for writing your code. So over here, you're going to see that it's going to say projects. We're going to use Maven, which is the build tool. Languages, we're going to use Java. Spring Boot, like the version, I'm just going to leave it as is. And then here for the name, we could put, I don't know, YouTube demo. And then for dependencies, this is essentially the dependencies you see in the POM-X file. But with Spring, these are starter dependencies. So essentially, you'll have the name of one dependency like Spring Web, but it will include multiple dependencies in that one dependency. And so to give you an example, I have the book open here. So whenever we add a dependency, you will have something similar to this here. So in the past, you would have to individually add each dependency. So let's say I'm going to create a Spring, or let's say I'm going to create a web application. I'm going to need Tomcat. I'm going to need Spring AOP, Spring Contacts, all these different dependencies. And in the past, the developer was responsible for adding each individual dependency. However, with Spring, you add one dependency starter. That dependency starter contains all the dependencies within it. So if I know that I'm building a web app, I'm going to look for a Spring Web dependency starter, and it will include everything that I need in order to do web development. On top of that, it does also make sure that they all are the same compatible version. So there's not going to be any confliction. So that's kind of a really great advantage of the Spring starters. So now that we have this, and I know for like a lot of us, it's kind of weird that we have to go to some random website in order to start with the code. Normally you just go to your IDE and start working. But this is with Spring, this is the Spring Boot. And so you're gonna click generate. And so you're gonna basically download a zip file right here. And so now that I have a zip file, I'm gonna have to extract it. So I'm gonna extract it here. And before I do that, I'm gonna create a quick folder right here, new folder, and I'm gonna name it A YouTube so that I know where I'm gonna generate this this program. So I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna click extract all. I'm gonna put it into a folder that I'm familiar with. So I did just say a YouTube, which is here. And then I'm gonna select this folder and I'm gonna extract it. So basically all I did was I went to start.spring.io. I essentially created a zip file based on what I wanted. I extracted that file and now it's here. And so what I want to do is I want to go to my IntelliJ or my IDE and I want to open that file. So if I go to my desktop, which should be somewhere, okay, here. So now that this is basically the folder, I'm gonna open it here in my IDE. All right, it might take a little while for all this to get sorted. Oh. So you can see the demo folder here, and this is my application. So it's going to take a little while to sort. YouTube demo. All right, at this point, I'm just going to give it a quick second. All right, guys. So this is basically where the code starts from. It's public static void main. So this is gonna start the Spring application. You don't really need to know much about this right now. This page, just know that it's the starter page. Here, this is our pom.xml file, and you'll notice that the dependencies are, let's see. Okay, here we have Spring Boot Starter Web, and this one here, Spring Boot Starter Test. This is automatically going to be added with everyone, every Spring project. Basically, I think it creates like a test folder. All right, so now that we have this, whenever we, let's go back to the Spring. What basically we did, it's kind of like creating your own project in IDE. You know, you have to choose the build tool, you have to choose the language. In this case, the version for the Spring Boot, you put the group, artifact name. You do all these things when you create your project in any IDE anyways. Here we have the advantage that we already have the Spring dependency add-in. And of course, we have this start of the code, the public static void main. So that's a big part of the work already done for us. And so at this point, we are working with a model view controller architecture. So we're gonna have to create, and I'm gonna create it right here. I'm gonna right click Java code, and we're gonna call this, should we just call it a controller? Main controller. We're gonna call this main controller. Okay, so basically a main controller or a controller is basically a way for us to route code. So let's see if we can find it in the book, just so you have a visual illustration. It should be, let's go up. Let's see if we find it. Okay, so this doesn't exactly show it, but basically the controller is gonna take the request and it's gonna point it in the right direction. So if the request was for a product, it would point towards product. If the request was for the client page servlet, it'll point there. So that's essentially what the controller is gonna do. And to make a controller in Spring is really, really convenient. It's very simple. We're just gonna add an annotation that is gonna be annotation that's gonna say controller. Before I do that, I do want to show you this thing over here. In order for us to test that it works, let's go back to our code. After we run our code, it should say this: Tomcat started on port 8080 with context path blah blah blah. Basically tell us that it's running. So if we go here, gonna ignore this class that I just made for right now, and let's just make sure that it runs first, right? So let's run it. Yeah, my YouTube application. Okay, so over here you see it that it's already running. So let's give it a second to make sure we didn't get any errors in this regard. So let's see. All right, look, Spring here, Spring Boot, telling me the version, which is the one we fixed. All right, here it says web server failed to start. Port 8080 was already in use. All right, so what this means, so Tomcat server is set to start on port 8080. So if you have another program on port 8080, then it is essentially it's not going to work. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to hit, let's say, Control Alt Delete. I'm going to go to my task manager and I'm going to see what is actually running on that port. See if I can see it through here. Task manager, just services. Oh, this is the program ID. That's not equivalent to the it's not equivalent to the port number, I think. Let me see what's running on 8080. Yeah, this is the PID. This is the program. Let's see. Okay, that's fine. So essentially, my memory failed me a little bit, but so I identify port in use and close. All right, so you see, anytime you get a problem, you can just look it up. So here, okay, you can open the command prompt, you can insert this task, get something similar. Okay, let's see. Control task center process tab. Okay, there's a process tab. Where is it? Here. Okay. Find. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. We're just gonna follow these basic instructions. So here it says to open the command prompt. So that's what I'm gonna do. There's a specific command it wants me to insert. So we're gonna go ahead and Control C this right here. Control V, we're gonna play it. All right, so what is this showing us? This is showing us all the ports that are in use. Let me make sure I'm looking at the correct column. Okay, so local addresses. This is the PID. I want to say should be the local addresses. All right, so let's keep reading here. If your taskbar, you can match the process ID that's listening to a process name. This feature enables you to specify because this port is in use already and the program is used for the same port. Okay, if you do not have a PID column, click view, then select whatever. Okay, find. Okay, perfect. So I think this over here, I'm gonna put it here. However, I'm gonna put 8080. Okay, so this says that 4900 is listening to port 8080. So I need to close the program that has the PID 4900. So if I go to my task manager, I'm gonna go to processes and I'm gonna look for, wait a second. Oh, here, PIDs. So let's go to PID 4900, which you see it's an Apache HTTP server. So we're gonna end that task. Sure, yes, I want to end that task. So now I should have this port open again. So you probably won't have this problem the first time you run it unless you have like another server in your computer, and then we should rerun it and make sure that it works. And let's make sure that we are getting the result that we want. Okay, over here, it says started YouTube demo application in 4.51 seconds. So now this means that it's running. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop it. Basically, this means that we were successful in running the code. And you see, basically,